Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vishnupad, Paramamsa Parivrajacharya, Stostasta Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramamsa Parivrajacharya, Stostasta Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Upagopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki. Vrindavan Dham Ki. Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki. Yamunamayi Gangamayi Ki. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Sodanandanam Rajajanaranjana Jamunatira Manashari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayam Vishnupad Purnamahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashvatarashada Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Raj Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam ki Samvita Bhakta Vrinda ki Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Activities. O Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. O Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. O Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tasmat karmasu barhishman Ajnana dhartakashishu Marta drishtam krita shutra Sparashi Shwasprishta Vastushu Tasmat Karmasu Bharhishman Agyanadharta Kashishu Marta Drishtim Krita Shotra Sparashi Shwasprishta Vastushu. Mothers, Agyantarta Kashishu Marta Drishtim Krita Shrotra Sparashi Shwasprishta Vastushu Tasman Karmasu Bharhishman Agyanadharta Kashishu Marta Drishtim Krita Shotra Tasmat therefore Karmasu and fruit of activities. Barhishman, O King Prachina Barhishat. Agyanat, out of ignorance. Artakashishu, and the glittering fruit of result. Ma, never. Artadrishtim, considering to be the aim of life. Krita, do. Shrotrasparishishu, pleasing to the ear. Asprishta, without touching. Vastushu, real interest. That's nice. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: My dear King Barhishman, you should never, out of ignorance, take to the Vedic rituals or to fruit of activity, which may be pleasing to hear about, or which may appear to be the goal of self-interest. You should never take these to be the ultimate goal of life. Purport: in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verses 42 and 43, it is said, Yami mam pushpitam vacham pravadantya vipashritaha veda vadarata parata nanyar astiti vadinaha kamatma nan swargapara janma karma pala pradam kriya vishesha bahulam vogaishwarya gatim priti. Translation: Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resulting in good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sin's gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. End quote. Generally, people are very much attracted to the fruitive activities sanctioned in the Vedic rituals. One may be very much attracted to becoming elevated to heavenly planets by performing great sacrifices like those of King Barhishman. Sri Narada Muni wanted to stop King Barhishman from engaging in such fruitive activities. Therefore, he is now directly telling him, quote, don't be interested in such temporary benefits. In modern civilization, people are very much interested in exploiting the resources of material nature through the methods of science. Indeed, this is considered advancement. This is not actually advancement, however, but is simply pleasing to hear. Although we are advancing according to such concocted methods, we are forgetting our real purpose. Bhaktivinoda Thakur therefore says, Jara vidya yatamayar vaibhav tomar bhajane bhada. Quote, materialistic studies are the glare of Maya only, for they are an obstacle to spiritual progress. End quote. The temporary comforts of life experienced either on this planet or on other planets are all to be taken as illusory because they do not touch the real purpose of life. The real purpose of life is to go back home, back to Godhead. Ignorant of the real purpose of life, people take to either gross materialistic activities or ritualistic activities. King Barhishman is herein requested not to be attached to such activities. In the Vedas, it is stated that the performance of sacrifice is the actual purpose of life. A section of the Indian population known as the Arya Samajists lay too much stress on the sacrificial portion of the Vedas. This verse indicates, however, that such sacrifices are to be taken as illusory. Actually, the aim of human life should be God realization or Krishna consciousness. The Vedic performances are, of course, very glittering and pleasing to hear about, but they do not serve the real purpose of life. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnanam Mirandasha Giranjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitamina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitamina Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpaturubhyascha Kripa Sindhuverevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The last line of the verse of the Sanskrit is nice. I like that. Shrotra Sparshi Shu Aprishta Vastushu. It means, Shrota Sparshishu means it's pleasing to the ear, but Sparshishu, but it doesn't actually touch vastu, anything substantial. So it was reminding me of that verse that I often mention from Prahlad Maharaj's prayers. Krutra Shisha Shruti Sukha Mrigatishni Rupa. He's asking the question, where is happiness in this material world? And then he says the happiness is Shruti Sukha. It's simply in hearing about it. It's simply in hearing about it. And then when you hear about it, it creates an image in the mind. Or let's say the mind comes up with an image. And the image that you see in your mind is very pleasing. But Mrigatrishni Rupa, there's just like a mirage in the desert. The mirage in the desert is very pleasing to see, but there's nothing substantial. Anyone who goes after it would only become, victim, and then die. So in the same way, Prahlad Maharaj is saying, we hear about happiness in this material world, and the mind will create an image that is very pleasing. It's very pleasing to hear, but it doesn't actually touch anything substantial. What is that substance? Happiness, in essence. Where is the happiness? The goal of life for anyone, whether they're atheistic or theistic, is to be happy, no doubt about it, because the soul is Anandamaya. He's pleasure-seeking. So the goal of life is certainly to be happy for everyone. So he's saying the happiness that is mentioned in the Vedic literature is dealing specifically with fruitive activities, karmakanda, may be very pleasing to hear about, but sparshishu, but it never actually touches anything that is substantial. In other words, you never get the happiness. It's nice to hear, but the experience is never actual happiness in the material world. It is rather frustration. So the same thing is being mentioned here. Shrotra sparshishu is pleasing to the ear, What is pleasing to the ear? Pushpitam vacham. Prabhupada's quoting Bhagavad Gita. The flowery language is very pleasing. Because when something is not very attractive, one would have to use various methods in order to attract people to something that's not at all attractive. That is what the flowery language of the Vedas are, or in general, the flowery language of society. It's like if I have maybe I'll give a more practical experience. We have some, let's say, rodents in the temple. So if you just put like a death trap that is very obvious, it's got like a big sharp knife on it and big claws on the side, and then obviously if they walk in it, they're going to be crushed. It's not that the rodents are unintelligent. They'll see, no, I'm not going for that. It's not that they are unintelligent. It's a death trap. So you want them to, generally, Vaishnava doesn't want to harm any creature. I'm just speaking and contextually. Just take it. Don't say, I thought you were supposed to be Vaishnavas. Don't get into that. I'm just giving it as an example. So then you want to get rid of the rodent, but if a death trap is there, he will not walk into it voluntarily. So you have to make it very attractive. So you make sure the claws are covered with a nice, let's say, wall, and he doesn't see the hook on top, and you put nice foodstuffs in there. It looks very nice. So, this is a very nice thing. Then he walks inside the thing, and then he's killed. So this is what the flowery language of the Vedas or of modern society is. Actually, it's a death trap. It's actually a death trap, and no one in their right mind would actually pursue it. Bhagavatam says this: if they were aware of the actual reality of the situation, no one would actually pursue material life. Therefore, Krishna also says this thing: Janma mritu jara vyadi dukkha doshanu darshanam. He says the perception of the evil of birth, death, disease, and old age will give rise to spiritual impetus. He considers that an item of knowledge because it will give rise to spiritual impetus. Once a person realizes, this is all death trap, then it will give rise either to nihilism, if they're like totally atheistic, they don't have sufficient piety. They'll say there is no purpose of life, maybe they commit suicide or something. Or it will inspire a higher level of inquiry. So this perception of the evil of the actual nature of the material world helps to nourish spiritual impetus. So then the modern civilization, they block that nourishment by blocking the perception. And it's primarily done with flowery language. It is primarily done because the images alone may not be powerful enough to attract a living entity. Just like, for example, the Bahamas. So that would be a very nice image. When you see the Bahamas on the TV, very nice images there. Cancun or, some of these places that are very nice. But then you may think that this is beyond, I don't have enough money to enjoy such opulences. So then they have to create a situation where you think that you do have enough money. They call it credit cards and all these things. Actually, you have no facility to enjoy such nice things, so you will never actually pursue it. But then by using flowery language, they convince the conditioned soul that no, it is possible for you to also enjoy it on the same standard. You can also do it. And you're like, but I have no money. No, what you have to do, and then they create some word jugglery, and that way the jiva gets easily bewildered, and then he begins to pursue it. So this flowery language is very important for capturing the conditioned souls. And that's how they actually remain in this material world. Srila Prabhupada is also speaking about how he's giving modern context to this, how people are very much attracted to exploiting the resources of material nature through the methods of science. And although the results of such activities are not actually very, good. If you were to just do a little search, and don't do this, but if you were wanting to do some research and try to find out all the various anomalies in our modern so-called advanced society, it would take you 5 or 10 minutes to find hundreds and hundreds of problems with the modern situation. But the way they capture conditioned souls, especially from training, from the very youth in modern education, is you just tell them this is advancement. And that's just very pleasing to hear. Very pleasing to hear. It's like when you come as a new devotee And you show a little sincerity. Sometimes when we're fresh devotees, we show a little sincerity. We're like really enthusiastic to do service. It's all artificial, but we pretend like we're very. Maybe we may even feel that way also. Like in the beginning, it's kind of like that. We're fresh out of the whirlpool of material existence, and we feel nice, so we want to do some service. So then some devotee may say, "Wow, Prabhu, I think you're very advanced," and in the heart you feel so good. It's just pleasing to hear. Actually, unadvanced, neophyte. But when you hear you are very advanced, then it is very pleasing to hear, and you feel encouraged. In fact, Sachit Kumar Prabhu was telling me this thing in Gita Nagari when we were cutting vegetables. This is a little tangential, but it was a good point. When we were cutting vegetables, after the vegetables got finished cutting, he said, Prabhu, there's one thing you have to always say after the vegetables get finished cut. You finished cutting the vegetables? So he said, I'll show you. So we were finished cutting the vegetables, then when one bhakta was there, he said, Prabhu, wow, you did such a good job. And then the devotee looked very pleased, very happy. And then Sajid Kumar told me, he said, this is what you have to do after every. Actually, just tell them they did a very good job and they feel so good that they want to do it again. So I thought that was very clever. Just by his pleasing language, how the jiva gets captured. Actually, he may not be, maybe the devotee was spacing out also. But in order to encourage him further and further along, you said, oh, very good job. I've never seen anyone cut potatoes like that before. So nicely you did it. And then he feels encouraged. He said, will you come for lunch? Yes, I'll also come for lunch. And he feels very enthused. Sajid Kumar told that little trick. So anyway, now that you all know the secret, you may say, I'm not going to fall for that. I'm not going to come for service. So in the same way, the modern civilization, actually, if you were asking them to substantially prove how the modern society is advancing, then it may be challenging for them to do so. Of course, superficially, they may give some arguments about modern technology, etc. But if you were to just present a few doubts, the best way to challenge is through inquiry. Don't try to argue directly, but through inquiry, you try to present a few doubts. For example, it is a very simple inquiry. When we were unadvanced, we had fresh water, fresh air, so many fruits were there available for everyone, etc. The environment was nourished in so many ways, and now that we've become advanced, the water is polluted, the air is polluted, the soil is spoiled, etc. You can present, that's an environmental type of argument. So in which way are we advancing? You present a doubt like that. Then it may be very difficult for most of the conditioned souls who feel that we are advancing to substantially show that we are actually improving. Because generally, most persons don't think deeply about any of these things. They just, whatever they've been fed from the beginning, that's what we repeat, isn't it? That's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur Prabhupada is quoting, Jada Vidya Yata Mayar Vaibhav Tomara Bhajana Bhada. That materialistic studies are the glare of Maya only, for they are an obstacle to spiritual progress. Just like when we go to the universities and we try to explain consciousness to people. Very difficult. When you go to a village, very easy to explain body-soul difference. So easy thing, they get it very easily. You go to a university, you try to explain to PhD students, very challenging. They say, well, how do you know the table isn't conscious? And then the question is so dumb that you get bewildered. Actually, you get a little bewildered because it's such a stupid thing that you also don't know what to say sometimes. Often I've mentioned this point that when I was at DePaul University one time, I was trying to explain soul-body difference to one student there. And he said, how do you know the balloon is not conscious? There was one balloon, there was an air balloon there. How do you know the balloon is not conscious? So I got bewildered. Like, I didn't know what to say. Like, right off the top, I was so bewildered. I'm like, the balloon is obviously not conscious. And then he said, no, maybe it is conscious. I think it is conscious. I said, okay, how is it conscious? Can you prove it? How is the balloon conscious? And you know what the argument he gave me? He said, when I take tack, and poke it into the balloon, it pops. That was his argument. And I was like, I don't have any sweets on me today. But if I had a sweet, I would give it to you because I think that's the only thing that's going to help you in this state. This is due to the materialistic training. So many times people in the modern society, it's not that they've very deeply thought about what is advancement. They just say we are advanced. It's very pleasing to hear we are advanced. And the conditioned psychology has it that we have to be the best. Whatever we're doing is always the best. I joined this institution, therefore this institution is the best. Not because the institution is the best, because I joined it, it is the best. Understand? Yashat mabudi kunapetri datuke. What is that? Swadi kalatradishi boma igyadi. My country is the best, not because it's a nice country, but because I was born there. It is the best country. And this is the conditioned psychology. If I had to join the St. Jerome's across the street, then that would be the best. Not because the church is better, but because I joined it. This is the way the conditioned psychology works. So then the conditioned soul hears, I am advanced. He feels so very nice about that thing that it actually blocks his actual deeper level of thinking about the subject matter. For example, what does it mean to be advanced? One thing that is certainly required in the matter of understanding advancement is where are you going? Advancement means you should be moving towards some particular destination. Prabhupada gives a nice example in the SSR that if you're on a train and the train is said to be advancing when it's moving towards its destination, that's called advancement. And if you increase the comforts on the train, that may be very nice for a certain group of people, and for a certain other group of people who has been exploited, it may not be nice. But just because the comforts have increased on the train does not mean that you're advancing. So what does it mean? So you have to identify what is the destination. In a modern society, you cannot discuss intelligently about that because they say it's all relative. Purpose of life is relative. Whatever you say the purpose is, that is nice. And everyone can have their own idea. So without being able to establish purpose or goal of life, then how do you intelligently speak about advancement? Anyway, so these things are not actually deeply thought about. It's just that word comes out, you are advanced. And the conditioned soul feels very satisfied, and he remains bewildered. So therefore, Narada Muni also condemned this thing, these fruitive sections when he was speaking to Vyasadeva. Because of the bodily conception of life, people are already inclined towards sense gratification. And now you've just encouraged them on the basis of the Vedas. Therefore, these literatures are all abominable. Jugupsitam. It was very heavy with Vyasadeva. And here Narada Muni is also telling Barhishman not to be attracted to such things because it is actually simply a death trap. And we're forgetting the vastu. What is the real happiness? Of course, going back home back to Godhead is a real platform of happiness, but generally speaking, it's happiness. So actually you can see also in the modern world that people have actually forgotten that this is their purpose, to be happy. Because we're so entangled now in just survival and working hard that the whole idea of even becoming happy is becoming like, how you say? Like a sentimental type of thing. Oh, you're talking about happiness, you're not in reality anymore. Although people want that thing, they want to be happy, but because we've become so bewildered by materialistic activities that we were also becoming forgetful of the real purpose, which was to become happy. Why am I working so hard? This is why it's, in the same Song Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, such materialistic education turns people into an ass. An ass means working very hard but doesn't know why he's working so hard. He forgets. So the conditioned human being, the soul in the human body, he forgets, why am I working so hard? In modern civilization, why am I working so hard? They forget, actually it was to be happy because we are so entangled in our activities. So Prabhupada is saying this thing, that we forget the actual vastu, the real substance is to become happy. So I wanted to mention this thing, that this was a general point, and the point I really wanted to mention that I was inspired to mark in this purport was that what is the real danger of flowery language? I mean, we were speaking about on the kind of material side, it inspires a person to enter into a death trap, birth after birth, puna charvita charvananam. But the actual real danger of the flowery language, you can call it prajalpa, also another form of prajalpa, is that it stills the desire to serve the Lord. This is the actual danger. This is mentioned by in Mana Shiksha by Raghunath Das Goswami. He makes a statement, Asad Vartar Vesha Vrishija Mani Sarvasva Harini. He says that the association of asatvarta means bad association. It also means, asatvarta also means, particularly refers to the association of hearing various unfavorable things. Particularly, Dravida Prabhu told me that. Asatvarta particularly refers to that thing. He says this bad association is like a prostitute. And the prostitute who steals the treasure of your heart, which is the desire to serve, Sri Sri Radha and Krishna, he says there. This is the real danger of this flowery language. That is compared to a prostitute. Just like a prostitute, she looks very attractive. She attracts the attention of some foolish person. But her whole business is not for that person. Her whole business is simply pickpocket. That is her whole, take his money. And that is her whole business. In the same way, he says this asatvarta is like a prostitute, and his whole business is to steal the desire to actually serve the Lord. That is a very dangerous thing. By desire, we come into this world, and by desire, we're going to get out. And Krishna actually reciprocates with us on the intensity of our desire to render service to Him. Otherwise, there's no question of service. Without the feeling, there is no question of actual devotional service. Devotional service is not just feeling. Therefore, Prabhupada said devotional service. But on the other end, devotional service is not just activity. It is also the intention of the activity, the heart of the activity. It's both together. So Prabhupada, because in India, people think devotion, you close your eyes and you're having devotion. They have these things, bhakti fest and all these things like that. And devotees, we may go there for helping them out a little bit, but they think like that bhakti fest, and this devotion. But actually, Krishna knows what's in the heart. And it is actually the feeling of the devotee that Krishna is reciprocating with. And the feeling, the bhava. This is mentioned by Prabhupada in Chaitanya Charitamrita in the story of Nrsimha Brahmachari. I like this purport so much. Nrsimha Brahmachari, when Mahaprabhu was going to Vrindavan from Puri, then Nrsimha Brahmachari wanted to render some service to him. So within his mind, he began meditating and making a golden robe for Mahaprabhu to walk on. Now Mahaprabhu, all the devotees thought Mahaprabhu was walking on an ordinary robe, but Mahaprabhu can see he was walking on a golden robe. And the Srimad Brahmachari started making nice fragrance on the robe, so many flowers, birds, colorful trees, and his meditation. And when in his meditation, when Mahaprabhu gets to, what is that? Kanai Natashala, he's not able to meditate past that. So then he tells the devotees, Mahaprabhu will not go to Vrindavan this time. He will not go past Kanai Natashala. So the devotee is like, you're mental speculating. And then later on, Mahaprabhu actually didn't make it past Kanai Natashala, because after that he goes to Ramkeli, and then Sanatan Goswami tells him, this is not very good that you're bringing so many people to Vrindavan. You look like a charlatan. So later on, Mahaprabhu goes back to Puri. He doesn't actually make it to Vrindavan. So anyway, Prabhupada comments in the purport to this verse in the beginning of the Madhya Lila, a very beautiful point that he makes. He says, someone may say, Nrsimha Brahmachari wasn't doing anything. He was just simply sitting and meditating. He's not doing anything. But Prabhupada said, one may be thinking in this way. He said, but when we offer various things to Krishna, like clothing and foodstuffs, etc., he says that is gross matter. And when the Srimad Brahmachari is meditating, that's subtle matter. And actually, Krishna doesn't accept anything material. So he doesn't accept neither gross material, neither subtle material. So both are actually the same. On the material platform, both are the same. So one may think, I'm offering so many things, and another one is meditating. Prabhupada says, on the material platform, actually both are the same because they're both material. So what is it that Krishna was actually accepting, Mahaprabhu was actually accepting? Prabhupada says he was actually accepting his bhava. And then he said, because Krishna is called Bhava Grahi Janardana. So he sees his intention to render service to him. And that was actually the spiritual element that Krishna accepts. And then he quotes, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati. It is actually, bhava, that feeling is the actual spiritual element that Krishna accepts in our services. I know we think, when we hear the word bhava, we think like bhav, bhakti, very rarely attained and so on. But Prabhupada said bhava is not such a hard thing. Prabhupada says this in the Bhagavad Gita lecture. I have the transcription there also. Prabhupada says, bhava, you'll never believe this definition of bhava when I tell you. But he says bhava means this, that don't just offer any flower to Krishna. you just pick something, some spoiled leaves are there, and you just throw it on the altar and offer it to Krishna. I have this in the Bhagavad Gita lecture. Prabhupada says this thing. He says, when you find what is the proper flower to offer to Krishna, and you think this is a nice flower to offer to Krishna, I'll offer this one. Prabhupada said that is bhava. And that is the spiritual element that Krishna accepts in our services. So then this asarvarta, this flowery language, it captures our feeling, our genuine feelings that we could be having towards Krishna and directs it towards matter. Therefore, Raghunath Das Goswami has compared it to a prostitute. It's stealing or capturing our desire to serve Krishna and directing it towards the material world. The actual goal of life is the nourishment of this spiritual desire. There was a particular other point I was wanting to make in this regard. It's leaving me a little bit now. So anyway, yeah, this is a final point I was wanting to make. Therefore, it is seen that Krishna, in order to help us nourish our feeling, will provide circumstances by which the genuineness can come out. Just like, this is seen many times in the Bhagavatam, particularly the example that first comes to my mind is Parikshit Maharaj, because he specifically points this out in his prayer, that Krishna was so kind to me that he came to me in the form of the curse of a Brahmana, because out of fear, I will go and surrender to him. Out of fear, I will go and surrender to him. So it is saying, anyway, this is a theme throughout the Bhagavatam. It is saying that Krishna will help us actually nourish our genuine desire. That is the actual goal of life, to attain Krishna. It is very easy to attain Krishna, in one sense. All it requires is chanting Hare Krishna with the actual feeling to please Krishna. It is not simply that if I chant more and more rounds that I'm going to achieve the goal of life. I remember hearing one devotee complaining to a senior devotee how he chanted like so many rounds, like something like an extraordinary amount of rounds, like 120 rounds, or some like huge number, every day for the month of Kartik or something. And he was crying because he didn't get any experience. So he was crying to the senior devotee, I chanted so many rounds, how come Krishna isn't reciprocating? So this devotee said, nonsense, chant 100 million more. It's not that you can oblige Krishna with your quantity. Oh, I am chanting so many rounds. Chaturmasa, I've mentioned this many times, or Kartik or Purushottam Masa is coming up. Oh, I've chanted so many rounds, therefore, because I've chanted so much, dear Krishna will be obliged to reciprocate. You can chant millions of rounds, but if you don't have the bhava, which Prabhupada is speaking, that seva, the desire to really serve Krishna, to please Krishna, then even if you chant millions of rounds, you can do that for millions of lifetimes also, according to Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So we see that, as we hear in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada has mentioned this, that we are supposed to be able to chant the Maha Mantra like a child cries out for the mother. And it just means with feeling. A very difficult thing to do. Because in the verse where Prabhupada mentions this, Janmaishwari Shuta Shri Bir, we see that our heart has so many material shelters. And it makes it very hard to cry out. Without chanting with the feeling of helplessness and utter dependency on Krishna, then the chanting is not perfected. One may be chanting many rounds and for many years, but without feeling that feeling of helplessness and dependency on Krishna, then the chanting is not reached perfection. The goal of all our activities in the Hare Krishna movement is to help perfect our chanting. And the perfection of our chanting is that feeling of dependency on Krishna. That is perfection of the chanting. So when we are sincere, we require the nourishment of that desire to please Krishna and the helplessness. So therefore, Krishna creates so many situations in the material world to make us sincere. Because, of course, when we first come to the Krishna consciousness movement, we all think we are very sincere. We are sincere. There is some degree of sincerity, otherwise who can stay? Who can stay in the movement unless there is some sincerity? No one can stay unless there's some sincerity, especially nowadays. Because the things are so confusing sometimes that unless you are sincere, no one will be able to stick around. So there is sincerity, no doubt, that to be in the Krishna consciousness movement, to continue serving, there's some sincerity there. But in order to achieve full perfection, to augment the fortune that we receive from our spiritual master, there's a requirement of nourishment of our sincerity. It needs to be augmented. So that is done, of course, with the help of the words of the spiritual master. That is done with the help of Krishna by creating so many bewildering situations in the material world that will forcibly call us to cry out to him. Another example is Narada Muni when his mother was bit by a snake. And Prabhupada says this is the way the Lord drags a sincere soul back home, back to Godhead, by making him utterly dependent upon him. Not that we should pray that our mothers die and all these things. That's not the message, All right, Mom, Krishna, remove my mother from the picture. Then I'll cry out only to you. No, we'll cry for our mothers only. We will forget Krishna. I also seen that happen. One person's mother left the body. He left Krishna consciousness also at that time. So it's not that we have to pray for such things. Krishna, please remove all the material shelters. Just like Arjuna, all the things get wiped out in one swipe. If Krishna were to do that, our Krishna consciousness will also get wiped out in one swipe, finished. Because we don't have so much faith. So Krishna is very kind that he may, as it's mentioned in the Bhagavatam, Yasyaha anugrinami harishe tadanam shanai. Step by step, begin removing things. Whenever there was any setback in Prabhupada's life, he would always quote this verse from the Bhagavatam and laugh. And even in his prayers called Vrindavan Bhajan, when he was in Vrindavan, he quotes this verse in his prayers speaking about various reversals in his life and how he would just laugh. And then he would quote this verse from the Bhagavatam. Yasyaham nugrenami, when Krishna shows his mercy to the devotee, hari sheta danam shanai, slowly, gradually he takes away everything and helps the devotee become completely dependent upon him. When the devotee chants in that spirit, then immediately perfection is attained. So, in the matter of increasing and nourishing our feeling of genuine service towards Krishna, then it is very important that we avoid flowering language. That's the main point. Because the flowering language will make us feel independent. You can come and enjoy over here. It will produce a sense of having security and material shelters. And once that security and material shelters is solidified, then there is no question of service to Krishna in the real internal sense. Because it is not just feeling. It's feeling that inspires action. At the same time, it is not just action. It is action that is impelled by the desire to actually render service. Without the desire for anyabhilashita shunyam gana karmadhyanavitam. That type of feeling should be there. So, in the material world, Krishna points out that it is a great soul who can actually feel that way all the time. To feel that way all the time, that I'm totally dependent on Krishna. That is a great soul. What is the dukalayama shashvatam? Napnuvanti mahatmanaha. A Mahatma can feel this. Dukalayama is all temporary. It is all a house of misery. Therefore, it should not pursue. Who can understand that? A Mahatma can understand that. Not such an easy thing. I remember I asked one devotee, I said, do you feel totally helpless in the service of Krishna? And he said, yes, I feel totally helpless. So I said, oh, he's a Mahatma. I started joking with him. It is not a very easy thing. And Krishna will expose that also. He'll expose that reality, that we're not feeling so helpless in his service. Because as soon as there be some confusion, as soon as there shall be some reversal, immediately we start to see where the heart goes. And generally doesn't go, we never think, I need to chant, or I need to go take shelter of a devotee. Immediately we think of bank balance, or immediately the heart will think of some material shelter, if that material shelter is actually there in the heart and conspicuously. So Krishna is very kind to all of us, and the spiritual master is very kind to all of us, by providing vibrations which can help root out the expectations that were instilled in our heart because of the asat varta, the materialistic vibrations. and help us to nourish our actual desire to render service. Then when that desire is in place, then chanting, even if you chant one name of Krishna with such a desire, then definitely back home, back to Godhead, no doubt. Because the Krishna was, and this was mentioned in the Nectar Devotion, I'll end with this, in this section of describing Krishna's qualities. So if you read the section where it's describing Krishna's quality of gratitude, so it's mentioned there, verses quoted there, Prabhupada from Rupa Goswami, describing how Draupadi chanted, the names of Krishna. And when she chanted the names of Krishna, Krishna felt completely indebted to her, just because of the way she chanted Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada gives I didn't get a chance to read that before coming down, but I remembered this thing. Just because of the way she called out to Krishna, Damodar, Govinda, Madhavati, she called out to Krishna this way. Just because of the way she called out to Krishna, it said Krishna felt completely indebted to her. It wasn't, so we also are calling out to Krishna. Krishna. Then he'll send some reverse, Mommy. I think Mother Don and Kelly shared a story like that of a devotee who was staying here in the temple, and she was rendering some service in the kitchen, and a mouse ran past her foot. And when the mouse ran past her foot, she screamed out, Mommy. And all the devotees were like looking at her like, oh my God. How long have you been practicing? Mother Don and Kelly shared a story like that with us. So, and we may laugh at that, but the reality is that is our situation. If we were to see that, we would be thinking, oh, thank God it was her, not me. Because I also would have did the same thing, man. Say Mommy, I would have said something else. Paycheck or something. I need to get some money so I can move out of here. I need to move to a nice place where there aren't any rodents. Like that. That's what we would have. Something is going on in the heart that is not sincere. And Krishna will expose that thing. So if we can really chant out the holy names of Krishna and render service with that type of feeling, then immediately perfection is attained. There's no difficulty at all. Therefore, most of spiritual life, you hear this thing so many times in our scriptures, that just by one time doing this, they get perfection. And immediately so many doubts spring up in the heart. Well, how is that possible, and so on. That's true, actually. It is a true thing. Immediately, Prabhupada says this in 272 Gita, that perfection is achieved immediately or not even after millions of years. It's just a matter of understanding and accepting the facts. There's some statement like that, 272 Bhagavad Gita, which is interesting, which I never got all these years, but Prabhupada says this thing. But the fact of the matter is that to attain perfection, it can be attained in less than a moment. Prabhupada says that thing to a reporter also. In less than a moment can be attained. So what are we doing all this time? Well, I'm not experiencing perfection yet, so what are we doing? Simply we're nourishing the genuine desire to serve Krishna. And then when that genuine desire shall be implanted in the heart, then one time you chant, one time you render service, immediately perfection is attained. So spiritual life is just a matter of nourishment, of genuineness. The simplicity, the simple desire to serve Krishna without desire for fame, name, adoration, distinction. And then when we shall purify ourselves sufficiently by our practices, then one time you chant holy name of Krishna, one time you serve the deity of Krishna, then immediately perfection is attained. So this flowering language is very dangerous in the matter of our cultivation. So therefore Narada Muni is directly telling, stop this nonsense. Don't go and hear those things. The spiritual master has to say like that, don't go and hear those things. We have computer, everyone here I see have computers, and that's another type of asat varta. This is asat sangha means computer. It can also be yukta vairagya, but generally it can be asat sangha. I see many devotees in the recent times also doing some things that's not proper on the computer. Not like heavy, not proper, but that's how it starts. It starts out a little bit not proper, and then it spirals down to other things. One should be very careful about those things. Spiritual masters say, stop this nonsense. Hear the class. Come to the class and hear the class, and that way purify our existence. So does anyone like to add anything or mention anything more on this point?
You were talking about the flowery language, but I was thinking about more about speech.
Yeah.
thoughtless, speech in devotee interaction, and when that is uttered, and it kind of, instead of elevating, it kind of strengthens the knot of desire in the heart. And I'm guilty of uttering that speech, so how can that be fixed?
What do you mean by uttering speech, like saying something like, Prabhu,
Yeah,
you're such a wonderful...
I know, I said something thoughtlessly in a very light-hearted way, but it seems like it has a serious repercussion because it was a thoughtless speech, but at that moment it seemed very light and it kind of flowery, but it kind of strengthened the knot of attachment of the other devotee. So when such a speech is uttered, what is the way to regret and rectify the situation?
It seems embedded in your question is the answer, because you said thoughtless speech.
Yes.
So it seems that, so the answer is we have to become more thoughtful. Like one thing that in the beginning, our Krishna consciousness thing that we do a lot is like, Prabhu, let me touch your lotus feet. And we say, I start giving very light-hearted glorifications and all these, and contaminating the individual. Because generally, and because as a matter of culture, no, Prabhu, I am not like that. But then what actually gets nourished is, maybe I have some purity, Devotees are beginning to recognize, I couldn't recognize, I am recognizing. This is something that in the beginning of my Krishna consciousness, I noticed a lot. So it definitely requires thoughtfulness. And to be thoughtful, we have to become more situated in the mode of goodness, minimally, in our lifestyle and in the way we conduct our lives. Particularly speech is the hardest thing to control. It is the strongest impediment to the execution of Krishna consciousness. Even last night, Parameshwar Prabhu mentioned a nice point about how in the boat, the rudder is very small, but it directs the whole movement of this gigantic boat, So he was speaking about the tongue, which is a very nice example. So to control the speech is not at all easy. So it is recommended that we perform austerity. And there are 5 austerities of speech. And if we were to have to actually apply that in a substantial matter, then one thing you'll notice is that speech has to reduce a lot. If you would have to think about what you say before you speech will reduce tremendously, which goes to show how much one may not be thinking in the matter of speaking. So, and that's a rectification thing. And of course, the rectification thing may be, as you say, inspired by regret. So it seems to me that in your question, the answer to the regret is also embedded, because you said you obviously perceive that the person has become more attached because of that utterance. So that means the regret must be stemming from the perception of the fact that you said something that helped deepen their attachment. So generally we don't perceive those things. In my own personal life, I noticed that because of the lack of such perception, we're always diarrhea of the mouth, and we help to dilute one another more and more and more and more and more. So anyway, doing such a thing is not easy to control the speech. Therefore, in a general way, it's useful for devotees to practice speaking less. I know we say silence. Prabhupada says simply by silence one can make tremendous spiritual advancement in the Bhagavad Gita. Simply by being silent. And then devotees we hear, that means that you should only talk about Krishna. And I say, that means keep quiet. Shut up. I'm joking with the man. It is actually very helpful. We see during the 32-round day or something during the Festival of Holy Name, we practice a Monavrata. That time you can see the agitation, especially when you have to go to the Prasadam hall and practice Monavrata. You can feel the agitation in the devotees' minds, in your own mind and devotees' minds, isn't it? I had that experience when in Gita Nagari where we did the Monavrata, and we went to the Prasadam hall. Devotees were sweating because it's like, I want to say something so bad. You're not supposed to speak anything. So that time we can see how much we're agitated by the speech. So anyway, as a practice, just speaking less is helpful. Chanting more helps to speak less. This is one reason why one should chant maybe extra rounds under the guidance of Guru, because you have to speak less. in order to do so. Otherwise, there's no question of chanting at all. And then whatever we are studying in our personal study or whatever we're personally hearing, then if we have to speak something, we should speak those things, which will help us to nourish faith in Guru, Krishna. That is very helpful when we stick to that form. It doesn't have to be mechanical. I know this is the next question that comes up. Well, how do we make sure it's not mechanical, like we're just sharing scripture and, it seems very artificial. There's always a doubt that comes up. But it doesn't have to be artificial. You can have beautiful discussions with a shastric center that will definitely spill over into one's personal life, and it can be completely beautiful. So, of course, it requires association. Because if I'm around persons who are very loose with their speech, how long can I resist such a thing? So, in being merciful to one another, then that's a kind of a culture that has to be built up more and more and more. That this will be this type of standard of interaction. Not mechanically, but genuinely. Otherwise, we'll always be regretting, always be trying to, and it'll continue. So I don't know if that really answers the question. It is not a small endeavor. To control the tongue is not at all a small endeavor. And the matter of improving our Krishna consciousness.
It's helpful. I was just thinking that one has to cultivate the moment-to-moment mood of service, a little slackening in that service mood and familiarity while conversing with friends. Very easily, speech can be detrimental in the relationship.
A lot of that also has to do with what's our purpose. Why are we really here? Why are we really serving here in Chicago, Kishore? What's our purpose? Is it really to attain the lotus feet of Krishna, or is it to, be in a nice social situation? Everyone who comes to Chicago, I was recently sharing this down in Prabhu, is devotees who pass through here, they're really, really appreciating Chicago. So they're coming back so many times. Even the book distributors weren't supposed to come back until a long, long time. Again, he said, somehow or other I'm here again by the grace of Krishna. So many have mentioned to us, they're so inspired by the Chicago situation. We heard it yesterday from a prasadam perspective, how Chicago is so nice. We were hearing yesterday from our Karunanidhi Prabhu. So in so many ways, our Chicago environment seems to be coming in line with the vision of Srila Prabhupada Maharaj. He wanted this to be like a training center that devotees felt they can come to, get trained up. And it seems like that's becoming more and more manifest by his desire and the desire of other devotees who are in line with the desire. Still, we have such a nice community, but what's our purpose? Is it just to be in a nice community of devotees? So if that shall be our purpose, then you'll not be able to control the speech. There's no question, because the purpose is not correct. The purpose is, I want to be in a nice environment. I feel loved and cared about. That is important. But why is that important? That has a relative importance in the matter of attaining Krishna, not an absolute importance. Of course, it has its absolute application on the perfectional platform. But on the platform of sadhana, it has a relative importance for nourishing actual attainment of Krishna consciousness. But if we're thinking, I'm in an environment I feel so loved and cared about, then, and that's what I'm here for, and not really the focus is in line with the actual attainment of the lotus feet of Krishna, no question of controlling speech, no question. Naturally, I'll get frivolous because my goal is to be in that nice social environment. So it really does require the development of faith in the actual goal of life. There is a Krishna. There is a spiritual world. I can also attain it by the mercy of my spiritual master, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. It can be attained. In this life, it can be attained also. Without that faith, I don't think one will be so successful in controlling the speech. How moment to moment, unless you really got the goal in mind that you're actually trying to pursue. So I often feel in my own personal life, because the way we hear here means in the conditioned state, I personally feel that sometimes I forget the goal of life. What is the actual goal? I mean, I know it theoretically, attain Krishna. But in my heart, what is my purpose for being here? I want to be guru. Some people want to be guru. Some people want to be just appreciated for being a good servant. And all these things are not the goal. It would not be so successful unless that faith is nourished. There is a Krishna. There is a spiritual world. I can also attain it in this life by the grace of my spiritual master. And then immediately controlled. Immediately controlled. Just like a student is controlled in school by his purpose. A good student, a good student wants to graduate on the dean's list. Like some of our devotees, I think, have a dean's list in top 5, and so many things are there, so many accolades. So immediately, if that shall have been his purpose, immediately controlled by that. Immediately controlled. I don't know what happened to the devotee sadhana and so on, but immediately, because that his purpose is there, boom. Oh, I can't go to that party because he's immediately controlled by his purpose. So what is our purpose? It should be identified.
Thank you, Prabhupada.
All right, there's only time for one more question or concern, or if anyone wants to say anything further.
You were mentioning in your class that if our desires are not genuine, then Krishna will expose them. And I was thinking that, that happens.
Or Maya, as it were.
Or Maya will expose them.
Hey there, sweet thing. Exposed.
Right. And, that happens all the time. And I generally think to myself, okay, I knew that desire was there, so I generally kind of sidestep and continue with whatever service needs to be done. And I was just wondering, after hearing you speak, I'm wondering if that sidestepping is the right approach. But what else can we do? Yes, we have these improper desires in our heart. Yes, they're not, our desire for Krishna is not completely genuine, but besides continuing to strengthen that not so genuine desire, is there anything else we can do?
I heard Srila Prabhupada give the example of if you have a cup full of ink, then if you shall pour milk into that cup, Prabhupada says this thing, I saw it on Veda Base. If you shall pour milk into that cup of ink, because milk has greater density, then all the ink gets wiped out and then it becomes completely filled up with milk. Prabhupada gives such an example like this. So in the same way, our focus is not so much, oh, I had that material desire, I had that material desire, I had that material desire. It's like a new brahmachari who's like, gotta stay away from women, gotta stay, and he's always concentrating on women. But say, I have to stay away from women because he's a neophyte devotee. He's thinking like that. Actually, the application is the positive process of putting in milk. It's not emptying out ink, but putting in something of greater density. So that was the whole point of what I was trying to say, is that by just, in short, as Prabhupada said it, render service 24 hours a day. And that's the short way. It means that 6 hours you sleep, no less than 6 hours, take rest, sleep, no less than 6. If you sleep less than 6 hours, you're deviating. I'm saying that for certain devotees. It's a deviation from the principles of Krishna consciousness. If you sleep less than 6 hours, especially if you've been in the movement for less than 5 years, the deviation. Then you sleep minimum 6 hours, and then 18 hours a day, non-stop service to Krishna. So they can be filled up with chanting, with hearing, book distribution, pot washing. 24 hours a day, one shall render service. That is called putting the milk in the cup. You're not worrying about getting out the ink. Srila Prabhupada has also told this thing in Bhagavad Gita, that if we are rendering service basically 24 hours a day, you render so much service to Krishna that you automatically forget the body. Prabhupada says this thing. In chapter 14, verses 22 through 25, purport, by rendering service, he automatically forget the body. That's a fact. Like some days when too many Maharajas get off the altar at the same time, so I naturally get the good blessings of rendering non-stop service to Kishore Kishore throughout the day and night. Then I see, even if you are tired, so many things, non-stop seva. You have no time to think about, I'm tired. You're tired. Like anything, you may be tired. You have no time to think that you're tired. You're like, 11:30, got to go for Raj Bhoga now. 4 o'clock, got to go. No time for thinking about that. And that way, the genuineness gets nourished like that. So ours is not the negative neti approach in the Mayavadis. Oh, I have a material desire. That would be counterproductive. Ours is putting in the positive. But if we shall notice that certain desires are becoming very prominent in the mind and heart, then those things you have to expose to get protection. That's what Raghunath Das Goswami recommends. You should cry out, I'm being killed, I'm being killed. And then the devotees will come for your rescue. So we shall see some of those desires, like some devotees express, like sex desire is usually the pernicious one. Sometimes it becomes very, very powerful. And we have all these dangerous sense objects surrounding us, particularly computer. everything accessible. Immediately you have to expose that thing so the voice will protect you. But otherwise, generally, you just fill in the milk. And everything improves. So that should be my answer. Thank you for tolerating my discussion. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.